Welcome to our Basic Accounting Questions and Answers Part 1. Question number 1. What is the debit and credit entries for the transaction of owner's investment in cash? A. Cash debit and credit owner's capital. B. Debit owner's capital and credit cash. So the answer for question number 1 is letter A. The correct entry is debit cash and credit owner's capital. Since owner's investment in cash results to an inflow of cash in the business, therefore we debit cash and we establish the normal balance of owner's capital as credit. Question number 2. What is the debit and credit entries for the transaction of acquisition of equipment on cash basis? A. Debit cash and credit equipment. B. Debit equipment and credit cash. The correct answer for question number 2 is letter B. The correct entry for the transaction is debit equipment and credit cash. Since the acquisition of equipment results to an outflow of cash resource of the business, we have to credit the account of cash and record the inflow of equipment as an exchange for the acquisition. We debit equipment. Question number 3. What is the debit and credit entries for the transaction of acquisition of inventory on cash basis? A. Debit cash and credit inventory. B. Debit inventory and credit cash. The correct answer for question number 3 is letter B. The correct entry is debit inventory and credit cash. Debit inventory, since the acquisition of inventory signifies the inflow of inventory to the business. Therefore, we debit inventory account. And we credit cash because in the acquisition of inventory, we have an outflow of cash resource of the business. Therefore, the cash account is credited. Question number 4. What is the debit and credit entries for the transaction of acquisition of inventory on credit? A. Debit inventory and credit accounts payable. B. Debit accounts payable and credit inventory account. The correct answer for question number 4 is letter A, since the correct entry is debit inventory and credit accounts payable. We debit inventory because the acquisition of inventory signifies an inflow of inventory to the business, and we credit accounts payable because the transaction results to an obligation of the business, and therefore we have to establish an accounts payable account. Question number 5. What is the debit and credit entries for the transaction of payment of accounts payable? A. Debit cash and credit accounts payable. B. Debit accounts payable and credit cash. The answer to question number 5 is letter B, since the correct entry is to debit accounts payable and to credit cash. Since the settlement of an obligation releases the business from the burden of the obligation, the accounts payable account is deducted. Therefore, the accounts payable is debited. And we credit cash because the settlement of accounts payable requires an outflow of cash from the business. Therefore, the cash account is credited.